That would help if I turn the mic on. Hey everybody, James Green here, partner and VP at Actual Tech Media. And I'm super excited to have a conversation today about cloud storage. We're going to be doing some question and answer, tying back to an event that Actual Tech Media ran back in August. We ran a big summit with lots of attendees who asked great questions. And unfortunately, just due to the schedule, we weren't able to answer them all. And so we're going to be running some Q&A shows to invite those presenters who were on that summit back on to a one-on-one discussion to have some Q&A. And we're going to take some of those questions that were asked back on the summit and dig in a little bit deeper. So today, I am excited to be joined by Jeff Dickey from NetApp. And Jeff was also presenting on the summit. He got a lot of great questions, which we're going to dig into today. So hey, Jeff, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, James. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic, and I'm not blowing smoke when I say that storage is a topic that I find very interesting. So I'm excited to have this conversation. We have broken the chat today down into a couple of big buckets, just to kind of group those questions and provide some clarity around where we're headed. The first one about cloud storage is about getting there. So a lot of people recognize that they would like to do something interesting with cloud storage, but they have a lot of concerns or at least questions about how they might start to do that. One of the things that multiple people brought up on the event is just that there are so many options available to them, as evidenced by the fact that you were on the event presenting one option or a host of options that NetApp offers. There's lots more. Can you just speak a little bit about the options that are available to people today with regard to cloud and especially cloud storage? Because a lot of the people asking these questions are coming from an on-prem environment where, you know, they've managed their one storage array for the last 10 years and that was great. I think they feel overwhelmed. So just talk a little bit about the space and what it's like today.
Yeah, so there's a tremendous amount. It's good for us as we're moving to cloud, and you know that's the great thing about cloud is you know it's about getting you know the right storage or the right instance that we need for those specific apps or you know the data that we have. You know, in the past, we would have to plan out, and we'd have to buy, you know, massive storage devices, not just for, you know, every use case that we have today, but you know, we used to have to think out even 5 years, and we'd have to buy for that. So, you know, I think having a lot of these options inside cloud is great for us, but it can be overwhelming, right? And how do you start? You know, you really have to, you know, figure out, get those insights to, you know, your workloads and your data, and you know, really figure out, you know, what's best for it. And we think we've got, you know, lots of options and lots of different types of options, not just in storage, but with compute and other things to really solve that problem of you know, being overwhelmed. And I think we've got a pretty good portfolio to address a lot of different things from a single vendor source that's agnostic to all clouds.
Would you have any advice for people about how to begin just narrowing down their choices, just given that there's so many? How do they even start to select a handful to test out?
Yeah, it's interesting too, because like, you know, I've been in the cloud space for a little over a decade, and most people actually know what cloud they're going to use before they've even started their project or they even have a project, right? You kind of know where you're going, and I think that's true too about when we're thinking about sizing and what we're doing. You know, it's you really want to focus on looking at what you have, right? Looking at what you have now, understanding that. You know, we do that from something called Cloud Insights, where we can actually, you know, look at everything you're doing on-prem, look at those connections between the applications and data, and from there you can really understand what you need and what you're going to need in cloud to get there. And a little hint too. I mean, you know, I've done a lot of cloud migrations, and you always need less than you think from going from bare metal. So I think a lot of people end up over provisioning everything. And you know, again, the great thing about cloud is you're able to optimize all the time, right? Optimization is not a one-time thing. You want to be working on, you know, doing better with your compute, doing better with your storage, and the cloud really unlocks that potential. We're not stuck in this kind of bare metal jail, and we can keep innovating and keep optimizing.
I'm glad that you brought up migrations, because that's another thing that lots of people asked about. Obviously, once you've figured out what you want to do, in most cases, you're not starting from scratch. So you've got to migrate stuff there. That's intimidating to a lot of people. Should it be as intimidating as it is, or have we come a long ways there and getting your stuff migrated into the cloud is approachable today?
It's very scary, right? And it's your whole business is your data. It's a little intimidating getting there. If you are a NetApp customer, you've kind of trusted us with ONTAP, and you understand the features. What we've done is we've taken 30 years of these enterprise features, and we've optimized that to run on all three clouds that you're going to use. So it's going to be a little bit easier knowing that you're not just going to somewhere absolutely brand new to the business. You're going to be running on an enterprise storage leveraging the cloud resources, and you're going to be able to if you are consolidating your on-prem data into like let's say Cloud Volumes ONTAP, not only are you going to get all your data kind of consolidated into the cloud, but you're also going to dedupe all of that data. You're going to be able to snapshot that data. You're going to have a lot of options for working with that data. And again, that's what's great about cloud, is just because it's there doesn't mean it has to stay there. It's just a great starting point. If you want to use a cloud native storage, it's just a transfer away. It's very simple to do that. Or if you want to move into our platform as a service offering storage, any of the clouds, again, the hard part is getting to cloud. But once you're in cloud, and I kind of talking about the optimization before, you want to do what's right for those applications and what's right for your spending and for the future.
We've talked about how it's challenging that there's lots of options out there. In your presentation on the summit, you quoted a NetApp CTO who said, "We've delivered more products in the last 18 months than NetApp has delivered in the last 25 years." There's an other side of that, which is that it's great that we have so many options, because as you're saying, you can tailor exactly the right solution to the need. Can you talk a little bit about why it's so cool that NetApp has been able to deliver so much so quickly in the cloud?
Well, it really speaks to kind of where we are in the industry and what we're doing. We've been strictly a on-prem storage company for quite a long time, and that's great. I mean, we're really good at storage, and we're experts at that. We've done a lot of strategic acquisitions on the cloud side that have really helped push our cloud products and more products forward, because we're using all of our cloud products to develop new cloud products and to enhance what we're doing and to add more features, so we can move really fast and be very efficient. And we're actually making some fantastic acquisitions to add to the portfolio. So yes, we're the best storage option, but we're getting into being able to optimize compute in the cloud. We're helping to auto scale instances in the cloud. And just this week we launched Project Astra, which is all about portability around the apps and the data when you're working with containers or Kubernetes anywhere.
So it's the flywheel effect. There's momentum there. The more cool stuff you create, the more your ability to create more cool stuff faster. Okay,
yep.
Last question.
And we have a motto where it's APIs everywhere, automate everything. So it's not we're not always working on the same things, and we're able to, again, I think that's why we've been able to out innovate is that practice of automation everywhere through having APIs on all of our products.
Cool. Okay, last question on getting there. A couple people asked on the event about when they're using storage in the cloud or wanting to, does that require any sort of hardware on premises?
Absolutely not. there are some connections when you're using our cloud storage to the on-prem devices, and we do make that simple. We have Cloud Manager, which allows you to connect to your on-prem devices and also deploy cloud storage, and then create the snap mirror between those devices. But we have a lot of customers that are even cloud native. We work with a lot of customers that don't know what a NetApp is. That I get that question a lot. What's a NetApp? Because these are born on the cloud. These are developers and cloud engineers that weren't part of the kind of the IT storage group, and they're able to really benefit from these enterprise features that have never been available to them in cloud, and now they have access to those features. So it's not just this is certainly not just for folks that have this hybrid cloud intention. It's very much very effective on 100% cloud, born on the cloud companies and cloud applications.
Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk about cost for a little bit. Of course, one of the top 2 or 3 concerns for most people is, what's this going to cost? And one of the recurring themes I saw in the questions was, does it cost more or less to do storage in the cloud than on premises? And obviously that's a hard question to answer, but maybe what you could answer is, how do you need to think about it differently?
Yeah, and I've been on both sides of this. I spent many years on the private cloud side of things, kind of justifying, what's cheaper. You can kind of make a case either way with how you're using the data. But in the end, it's not. You can't look at it just as a price comparison, right? And there's no apples to apples comparison when you're looking at cloud storage or on-prem storage. There's a lot of factors that we don't talk about when we're looking at this. We're trying to make an apples to apples comparison where, let's look at AWS. They have over 200 services and products available in their cloud. And when you're using cloud storage, you have access to all of that you've never had access to on-prem. And you're able to actually have the right size of volumes for those applications versus on-prem, where you really do have to kind of over-provision everything for the future. A lot of times people don't take into consideration the storage growth, the innovation of storage on-prem that's going to happen, the cost of that, having multiple vendors to manage, and then the support contracts that go on and on and on. Not to mention, these are forklift upgrades when you're upgrading your storage, and that goes away. So, I think it's very important for folks to really look at, the cloud storage is eliminating future technical debt, and you can't put a price on that.
That makes a lot of sense. Once you're there, one of the biggest things you can do is, as you mentioned, tune what you have provisioned to the actual workload. That is probably thing number one when it comes to optimizing for controlling costs in the cloud. Do you have any other quick tips as far as keeping your costs under control, especially when it comes to storage?
Yeah, absolutely. As you're moving to cloud, or you might be actually mature in your cloud practice. I mentioned kind of the APIs everywhere. A lot of times we don't have applications that are very consistent, right? Things change, applications blow up, different games blow up. Certain things we have to decommission, and or they're not as popular as it used to be, or not in heavy use. I would suggest that folks look at what we can do as far as automating service levels, right? So if you are using our Cloud Volume Service that's on each cloud, you're able to dynamically change the performance levels. All the way from starting at great IOPS all the way to extreme crazy IOPS and throughput, without having to touch a thing. It's API driven. You could actually have your app can make those changes. So let's say you're doing, you have an analytics job, or you're doing some reporting at the end of the month. If you're using cloud storage, you're going to have to pay for that high performance storage all month in order to leverage that high performance that you would need for just 5 hours a month. With Cloud Volume Service, you can have your same data in a lower performing volume all month, and then have it automatically change the service level and the performance level to meet those needs for the 5 hours that you need it. And that's going back to the true value of cloud and what cloud can bring.
So one of the things that I know a little bit about, but not a lot about, is using spot instances to keep your costs under control. You mentioned on your presentation back in August about some acquisitions, or an acquisition that NetApp has recently made, contains a tool, I believe, called Elastigroup and Spot. And it seemed to me like, based on what I was hearing, that is tools to help you take advantage of the cost savings for those spot instances, but maybe optimize against some of the potential downsides. Is that true? And if so, I think that's maybe interesting color for the cost conversation.
Yeah, so it's leveraging reserved instances is the way to go, but it's not easy by nature, right? It's a little complex. These reserved instances can get pulled, right? So they give you about 5 minutes warning, and then that reserved instance goes away. So if you're bringing enterprise applications, or you're not very sophisticated in cloud, this can be really challenging to really reap the rewards of reserved instances and save a lot of money. With the Spot acquisition, they've brought us several products to not only analyze your cloud spend and be able to take advantage of that immediately, but we have with Spot, we're able to do auto scaling across reserved instances. So Spot manages that with Elastigroup, and we can also do something very similar around Kubernetes, and really Kubernetes, anywhere at any of the providers, whether it's their service or whether you're doing Kubernetes in the cloud, and really able to dig. It's like magical bin packing. So there's a lot of wasting because you have to maintain the ability to scale and maintain the state in Kubernetes. And it really only is it getting the exact right instance that you need as you scale, but you're scaling over reserved instance, and that's going to save a lot. And if you're not in it's going to be a great place to start. Why would you start using reserved instances? And Spot also has a product called Eco, which is if you're just starting out and you want to get some reserved instances and not get locked into these 1 and 3 year contracts for a set instance type, I would suggest really looking at that as you move to cloud.
Cool. So not surprisingly, right after cost, another one of the big themes that I saw questions about was support. It's potentially confusing for people who are used to, when I have a problem that I think is a problem with my storage array, I call the storage array vendor. It gets a little fuzzy when you're deploying stuff in the cloud. So specifically with regard to the NetApp products you were talking about on your presentation, what is the support experience for a customer like? Who do they call? What are the sort of support agreements, terms, for lack of a better word? Like, how do I engage with support, and how does that compare to using kind of my traditional on-prem storage array?
Yeah, it's a very different experience, right? So if you're using let's say our Cloud Volumes on Tap product, which you actually can deploy and you kind of manage Cloud Volumes on Tap yourself across the cloud storage in any cloud. I mean, that's our product, right? So we support that. We support that just like we support our on-prem devices, right? So not only is it a single throat to choke for your storage, but it's also let's say you're using multiple clouds. We're going to support that. The only difference in support, we have our PaaS offering, which you can spin up storage in seconds, and we have that in GCP and AWS. We have a similar product on Azure. It's called Azure NetApp Files. We're not the first line support because that's actually a Microsoft Azure product. And again, that's kind of where the clouds trust us so much to where they've made it their own product. And Microsoft is the first line support for that product.
So I think the upside there, which is that it's your service you're offering and you support it. That's also one of the things that scares some people, because when they're deploying arrays on-prem and they'll do another one off-site and they get them configured to back each other up, they feel in control of that. It feels a little bit like when I deploy, say, Cloud Volumes, I'm handing over control to some extent of the availability and the durability of that data to you over there. Can you speak to that? And that may be an invalid concern. If it is, can you help us understand why?
Well, yeah, and I think there's a sense of control, but the responsibility lies solely on you, right? And you mentioned like let's say we're putting devices in multiple areas. Well, it's extremely difficult and expensive to have multiple locations, and who's the support for that, right? Who's supporting your BGP? Who's supporting all these WAN connections? Who's supporting every line that is in between your physical devices at multiple locations? When you're using our products, you're using the same, you're logging into one console to manage multiple regions, and it's the same thing and same experience. And you're not paying for that hosting of each region, right? You have the ability to scale out, and I think that's less scary, and that's where I would feel better about deploying my data in that end versus worrying about how close my data is in these regions and how to synchronize that. We've kind of figured that out in the cloud, and this everyone's using the cloud now, and everyone's using these the basic cloud data services, which have been working for everyone, and we're adding on the enterprise features and the encryption and all the security and very simple replication. Like we can do cross-region replication, and it's really difficult to do and manage. And there's so many fingers to point when you're trying to do on-prem replication. That a lot of that goes away.
So a lot of people will also say, I'm in control of the performance when it's just my array shared with nobody. And the concern is I could never use cloud storage in this way because I require too much performance. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and that's where we can really shine. It's pretty easy to move the low hanging fruit of your business's applications into cloud. We're kind of doing what's easy, right? And I think we're about 20% into cloud. If you look at everything, 80% of most businesses are not in cloud, and the reason is because it's more difficult. You really, in the past, you would have to really refactor everything to accommodate the failures and latency of cloud, and that's why cloud's been so successful. Like you don't have to it doesn't have all these enterprise features of the past that were very expensive and hard to use. But in order to really get those enterprise applications and databases and everything, like the last 80%, it requires very high performance storage. And kind of going back to, the clouds looking to us to solve that problem of having that high performance storage that's never been in cloud. We offer the IOPS and throughput that it just hasn't never been available. And so you can have this kind of a global file system and access at really blazing speeds that you would see on-prem, but you're not having to pay upfront for all those the SSD storage.
Right. So you mentioned earlier AWS having something like 200 services. A bunch of those are storage. And so one of the things that people on the summit were asking is, how do I decide between using a native offering versus a third-party offering like NetApp's?
Yeah, and this definitely comes up a lot, and it's really not, we don't come in and we say, oh, our storage is better. I mean, that's not a way to look at it. The way to look at it is what's the right storage for the application and the use case. Using EBS, there's so many great use cases and applications for that fit, and that's the right choice. And again, going back to having all these choices in cloud, which makes it great because we can just use exactly what we want or what we need. If you're going to want to manage the storage yourself in your way. If you want that full control, we're going to offer that. If you want high performance and you want it as a service and you don't want to manage that storage, you just want to know that you're getting the IOPS. We have that. We're also offering, the enterprise features that, that again haven't been in cloud, where we can do these point in time copies. Restoring your data is critical, and having the ability. And not only can we restore data from snapshots, I mean, it's very fast. You're not copying data from another region over. That can take a while, and that's downtime for your applications. So it's really about, what do you feel comfortable with, right? Do you want those enterprise features? Do you need them? Does the data need it? Do the apps need it? Figuring out what's best for the business, right? And what's best for those applications. And it's great that we have that choice. We hope you need those features, for your business, so you use our products. But again, it's really about the choice and flexibility of cloud.
This is not a question from the audience. This is a question from James. You mentioned in your presentation the tight level of integration that the NetApp cloud storage services have within the consoles of the cloud providers. I imagine that you expected that to be the reason that's so important to be obvious, and to some extent it is, but I'd love to hear more about that. Why is it so important, especially for the enterprises that are adopting these services, to have such a tightly coupled integration there?
Yeah, it's very important. I mean, you're looking at, there's a lot of the backplane of the cloud provider. How do you integrate that? So there's one thing to just kind of, be a partner and, kind of layer something on top of cloud. But in order to get that type of performance, you really have to be embedded inside. So let's take Azure NetApp Files, for example. I mean, a lot of work has been done, on that backplane to make sure everything works between the instances and the storage. So we're getting sub-millisecond performance on Azure NetApp Files. I mean, that's you just can't do that without this super tight integration and changes, not just from us, but changes in the cloud provider as well, to adopt that and to make that happen.
That makes sense. Okay. Last bucket, again, not surprising. Lots of people had questions around security. Obviously, with their data living there, this is probably the most sensitive from a security standpoint. And, I think a lot of people have stuck in their heads the concerns about cloud security from a decade ago. We have come a long, long way. And it's safe to say today, in most cases, that the cloud service provider's security stance is probably stronger than yours. And, you could make security headway by moving, not the other way around. But, people were asking for specific details or thoughts about what you do on the cloud provider side to secure the data.
Yeah, what an important question. And so we have multiple ways we address that, right? Obviously we have encryption, we have worm, we have all of these enterprise features for security, but we also have a product called Cloud Secure, which uses machine learning to understand what's an anomaly for you, right? So it's looking at data access across cloud or your on-prem data. And, one of the biggest issues is not an outside threat, right? It's an inside threat on top of outside threats as well. But, we're able to see and alert you about, hey, this doesn't look right, and we can actually help you take action on that with our products, right? So let's take a ransomware example, right? So if we can actually detect, let's say, hey, this looks odd, we're going to automatically snapshot that data because something is wrong. We might detect ransomware. So it's not just we're not just helping you. We're not just telling you what's going on. We're actually taking actions to protect your data, to protect your business, and to keep you going.
So one of the concerns with data security as it relates to backup is that it's more and more common for when there is a compromise, for the backups to be compromised as well. if we're going to push data to cloud storage services, presumably it's going to make sense to also back it up there. Can you talk a little bit about, especially from a security standpoint, backups in the cloud and protecting those, and maybe some of the same tools you just mentioned apply? I don't know.
Yeah, they do apply, and security is not an afterthought. It's not it's not built in after this is integrated, and you're only as good as your last backup, right? And so a lot of times on-prem, we have a very complex backup strategy and restore process, and if something does go wrong, it's really hard or takes a long time to get that data back. So when you're in cloud and you're using cloud storage, what we're offering is we can do point-in-time copies and not just have that point-in-time data, but we're putting that in lower cost object or blob storage. And that means, you can have a much longer retention than you can have on-prem, and the restore is much faster. So if you're looking at the typical when companies are going to Iron Mountain or going off tape and everything, which is essential. But if you have to go to that length, it's going to take quite a long time to get that data back. In cloud, we're going to give you a much longer retention at a very low cost because we're leveraging again, low-cost object store and low-cost blob storage, and you're going to be able to get that data that you need back.
So we're running up on time here. By way of wrapping up, I'm very curious to know, what are you excited about in the near future for cloud storage as we get close to moving into 2021? What's on the horizon for cloud storage?
So, I think for me, the most exciting thing is what we're doing with Project Astra, and how we're leveraging all of our innovation and storage to really push the boundaries of what's able to happen for the future of cloud native applications, right? So we're bringing enterprise features again to Kubernetes anywhere with Project Astra. So even no matter if you're an enterprise user and you have enterprise apps, we're able to provide that type of enterprise features with snapshots and backups. With Project Astra, we're bringing all of that into not just the data, but the application itself, right? So, we're able to actually do discovery, find out all the applications running in a cluster, and create portability. So if we can just take a snapshot of just that app that you're running inside that cluster, or we could take, those 5 apps in that cluster, and we can copy that to another location, another region, or on-prem. So we're really, you look at the Spot acquisitions and what we're doing with virtual desktops, with everything. It's not just about storage and optimization. It's about everything you're doing between applications and data, putting the app together with the data, providing those enterprise features, and then again, always optimizing everything.
This was so fun. Jeff, thanks for coming on to do this. If you're watching and you want to actually see Jeff's session from the summit, if you go to events.actualtechmedia.com, you can find that webinar there on demand. It's called Developing an IT Strategy, Storage, Infrastructure, Cloud, DR, Security, and Beyond. Ran back in August, but you can still get that on demand, and I definitely recommend checking that out. If you want to read some guerrilla guides on topics like this one, head to gorilla.guide, www.gorilla.guide. And Jeff, if people want to learn more about cloud storage solutions from NetApp or connect with you, tell us where to go.
So everything is centralized at cloud.netapp.com. Not only is all the information there, but that's also the portal to log in and get started with everything. And I'm on Twitter at Jeff Dickey. So feel free to connect.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks so much for doing this. We appreciate you being on. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll talk to you next time.